My name is Madison Hale, and the day my aunt told me I wouldn't get a dime from my grandmother's estate wasn't the day that broke me. It was the day that woke me up. People talk about family betrayal like it's a dramatic moment, something loud and chaotic you can point to. But the truth is, sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it sounds like a simple sentence said in a calm voice with a polite smile. You won't get a dime. That's what my Aunt Linda told me on a rainy Thursday afternoon while we stood in my grandmother's driveway, for days after her funeral. The house smelled like damp roses and old perfume, and there were still sympathy cards stacked by the door that no one had opened yet. I had come over because my aunt texted me, saying she wanted to discuss some things. I thought she meant memories, maybe packing up clothes, maybe talking through the grief that hung over all of us like a fog. I didn't expect her to speak like she was closing a business deal. She crossed her arms, leaned against the kitchen counter, and looked at me with a strange mix of pity and triumph. I recognized that look now. It was the look of someone who thought she had already won. She didn't raise her voice or get angry. She didn't accuse me or blame me. She just said it while wiping her hands on a dish towel like the conversation didn't matter at all. You won't get a dime, Madison. My stomach dropped. I blinked at her, unsure if I heard correctly. What do you mean? She shrugged, almost casual. Mom made her decisions. Everything is in place. It's better if you lower your expectations now. Her voice was smooth. Practiced. Too smooth for someone who had just lost her mother. She sounded like she had rehearsed this speech for weeks. I took a slow breath. Aunt Linda, Grandma loved me. We spent so much time together. Why would she leave me nothing? That got her. Just a flicker. Not guilt. Annoyance. The way someone reacts when their plan hits its first snag. She sighed dramatically. Madison, sweetheart, you were a wonderful granddaughter. But you weren't involved in the family finances. You didn't help with the house. You didn't understand the responsibilities. You were never really part of the structure. Structure. She said it like I was an outsider hovering at the edge of my own family. Like love had rules. Like time spent didn't matter unless it came with monetary value. I stared at her, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Grandma practically raised me. She took me to school. She paid for my dance classes. She came to every recital. She was there for everything. Aunt Linda gave a tight smile. Yes, but she wasn't obligated to leave you anything. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then said, I have a call with the attorney in an hour. They're finalizing the documents. I just didn't want you walking into the courtroom expecting something unrealistic. Courtroom. That word hit me like a punch. Why a courtroom? Why attorneys? Why was anything being finalized without me? My aunt saw the confusion on my face and added, you'll get the official notice when everything is filed. It's standard. Don't take it personally. Standard. Don't take it personally. She spoke like she was discussing weather changes, not erasing me from my grandmother's legacy. But what stunned me more than anything else wasn't that she said it. It was that she believed she had the authority to decide my worth. Aunt Linda had always been the controlling one. The calculating one. The one who believed she deserved more because she was the oldest sister. Grandma called her practical, but the truth was, she was territorial. She liked power. She liked control. And most of all, she liked being the one who made decisions. Even decisions that weren't hers to make. I walked out of the house that day with my heart pounding, my palms cold, and my mind refusing to accept the idea that Grandma would leave me nothing. It didn't make sense. It didn't feel true. It didn't feel like her. But grief is messy. Grief makes you doubt your memories. Grief whispers that maybe you didn't matter as much as you thought. I refused to believe that. Still, for the next week, a small part of me kept replaying her words. You won't get a dime. You won't get a dime. You won't get a dime. Like an echo that followed me from room to room. My grandmother's court hearing was scheduled for 10 days later. Probate. Distribution. Verification of the will. Just hearing the words made my stomach twist. Everyone told me these things were routine. Formalities. Nothing to worry about. But the way my aunt moved, the way she acted like everything had already been decided, the way she smiled that quiet little smile like she was waiting for me to crumble. I knew there was something deeper. The morning of the hearing, the sky was clear and painfully bright. The courthouse loomed over the parking lot like something carved out of stone to intimidate people. I walked inside wearing a black blazer that still smelled like the plastic from the dry cleaner. My hands shook, not from fear, but from uncertainty. My parents didn't come with me. My mother had passed years ago, and my father lived across the country, unable to fly in time. So it was just me. Just Madison. Just the granddaughter who supposedly wasn't going to get a dime. When I entered the courtroom, my aunt was already seated at the long wooden table, talking to a man in a navy suit. He was younger than I expected. Sharp glasses. Smooth hair. Polished demeanor. Her attorney. She didn't look at me when I walked in. She pretended she didn't see me. But the tightening of her shoulders betrayed her. I sat in the row behind the tables, hands clasped in my lap, heart pounding beneath my blazer. When the judge entered, everyone stood. Then sat. Then everything blurred for a moment, because my aunt stood up and walked confidently like she had been preparing for this her whole life. Your Honor, I'm Linda Monroe, daughter and sole executor of the estate. Sole executor. The words echoed like thunder. I felt my chest tighten. The judge nodded politely. And the granddaughter is present. Present. Not represented. Not acknowledged further. Just, present. Aunt Linda's attorney took over, laying out papers, highlighting details, explaining the distribution as if it were a routine blueprint. Standard procedure. Standard division. Standard rights. But when he said the words, "No named beneficiary under the granddaughter's category," my throat closed. My aunt glanced back at me. With satisfaction. With certainty. With victory. The courtroom felt smaller suddenly. Hotter. Harder to breathe in. My mind spun. Was she right? Did Grandma really leave me nothing? Did all those afternoons baking cookies, all those nights spent reading together, all those summers at her house mean nothing? My aunt stood taller as the attorney continued. She looked like a woman stepping into the role she always wanted, the family matriarch, the decision-maker, the one who held the power. Then the judge spoke. Before we finalize, I see an additional filing here. A sealed trust submission from the decedent. My aunt froze. Her attorney blinked. Sealed trust submission. I felt something shift in the air. The judge continued, voice firm. It appears the decedent filed a trust update 3 months before passing. This update supersedes portions of the will. My aunt's smile died on her face. She turned slowly toward the attorney, panic flickering across her eyes. The judge opened the sealed document. The room fell silent. And then he said the words that made everything stop. The primary beneficiary listed is Madison Hale. Aunt Linda gasped. Her attorney stuttered. The courtroom went still. And for the first time since Grandma died, I could breathe again. For a second, I thought I had misheard him. The sound of my own name in that quiet room felt unreal, like it had been dropped in from somewhere else. The words did not fit the story my aunt had been telling, the story she had been building piece by piece, the story where she was the only one who mattered. The primary beneficiary listed is Madison Hale. Everything stopped. The tiny shuffle of papers, the soft creaks of the benches, even the hum of the air conditioning, it all just faded for a moment. My heart was the only thing I could hear. My aunt turned fully now, her mouth slightly open, eyes wide. There was no fake politeness in her face anymore. No calm smile. No controlled expression. Her mask fell off in one smooth, uncontrollable moment and underneath it was pure shock. Your Honor, that must be an error, she blurted out, her voice higher than usual. My mother would not have done that. I am the executor. We already filed her will. The judge adjusted his glasses calmly. Mrs. Monroe, the will is one document. This is another. A trust. Filed, notarized, and recorded before her death. It has legal standing. It must be recognized. Her attorney leaned in quickly, whispering something to her in a low, urgent tone. She gripped the edge of the table as if she needed something to hold her up. I sat there, frozen, my fingers curled tightly around the strap of my bag. Grandma filed a trust. She filed a trust and put my name on it. She had never mentioned it. Not even once. Not even in her last weeks when we talked about everything from old stories to unfinished recipes. But that was like her. Quiet, deliberate, gentle, and sharper than people gave her credit for. The judge read on. The trust identifies Miss Hale as the primary beneficiary of specific assets, including, but not limited to, the family home, associated savings accounts listed under the Monroe household, and designated investment funds. Family home. Associated savings. Investment funds. Each phrase felt like a stone dropped into deep water. My aunt finally found her voice again. Your Honor, my mother did not know what she was signing. She was confused those last few months. The judge lifted an eyebrow. This document is dated 6 months before any medical decline noted in the record. It is accompanied by a capacity certification from her physician. She was of sound mind when she signed this. Her attorney swallowed hard. Your Honor, we request time to review. The judge shook his head. You can review, but the document stands. For now, we proceed under the assumption that this trust controls the named assets. My aunt's hand shook as she reached for a glass of water. It rattled slightly against the table when she set it down. All that confidence she had in the kitchen, all those little comments about me not getting a dime, all that smug satisfaction, evaporated like steam off a hot pan. The judge turned his gaze to me. Miss Hale, please stand. I stood slowly, my knees a little unsteady but my spine straight. Do you understand the terms as I have summarized them? He asked. Yes, Your Honor, I managed, my voice soft but clear. Do you dispute the contents of this trust? No, Your Honor. He nodded. Have you seen this document before today? No. He studied my face for a brief moment, maybe checking for signs of calculation or deception. He saw none, because there were none. I really had no idea. Then he did something I didn't expect. Your grandmother's handwritten letter is attached, he said, looking back down at the pages. Addressed to you. It reinforces her intentions regarding this trust. He glanced at my aunt. There is no ambiguity here. Aunt Linda's expression twisted, part humiliation, part anger, part disbelief. She had come here today expecting to watch me be quietly written out of the story. Instead, the story flipped in front of everyone. In front of a judge. In front of an attorney. In a courtroom where her word was not the final one. Her attorney tried one more time. Your Honor, could we at least clarify the scope of the trust versus the will? The judge exhaled patiently. The will governs whatever the trust does not cover. The trust supersedes the will for the named assets. In simple terms, the house, the savings accounts, and listed investments are under Miss Hale's control. The remainder is divided as per the will. The remainder. Not the center. Not the core. Not the heart. The remainder. I watched my aunt's face as those words sank in. The courtroom might as well have turned a spotlight on her. There was nowhere to hide. No relatives to whisper to. No kitchen to control. No private phone calls. Just 4 walls, wooden benches, a judge, and the truth. The judge went back to the file one more time. There is also an appointment of Miss Hale as successor trustee. She will manage the trust assets moving forward. Successor trustee. Trustee. Decision maker. The one person my aunt had told would not get a dime was the one person now holding the key to the most important parts of my grandmother's estate. The hearing went on. Paperwork was entered. Signatures were required. Dates were confirmed. None of it felt real. My name kept appearing in sentences that used to belong only to my aunt in her head. Responsible party. Trust beneficiary. Property holder. It was like watching someone else's life one step to the left of mine. At the end, The judge tapped his pen once on the desk and said, "That will conclude for today. Further questions can be addressed through legal counsel. Miss Hale, please meet with the clerk to sign your acknowledgement forms." He stood, we all stood, and then it was over. My aunt turned around slowly. Our eyes met. Gone was the fake pity. Gone was the casual superiority. Gone was the easy line about me not getting a dime. There was only a hard, stunned look. And underneath it, something like panic. She opened her mouth. I had no idea what she was going to say. An excuse. A denial. A new lie to replace the old one. But nothing came out. Her attorney touched her elbow gently, guiding her out, whispering something about appeal timelines and reviews and options, but his voice sounded weak even to my ears. You can't fight a piece of paper signed in clear ink with emotion alone. She walked past me in the aisle, her perfume lingering behind her for a second. She didn't say a word. She didn't look at me again. I stood there, watching the back of the woman who had stared me in the face in my grandmother's kitchen and told me I did not matter. She moved down the aisle smaller than I had ever seen her. Not because someone shouted at her. Not because she was dragged out. Not because she was exposed by scandal. Because the law itself had sided with the granddaughter she tried to erase. The clerk led me to a small side room. I sat at a table while she slid stack after stack of forms toward me. Sign here. Initial there. Acknowledge this. Confirm that. My signature looked shaky on the first few lines, then steadier as my brain caught up with my reality. When I was done, the clerk handed me a thin, folded letter. This is from your grandmother, attached to the trust file. We are required to give it to you directly. I stared at the handwriting on the front. My name. In her curved letters. My chest tightened again. I thanked the clerk and walked out of the courthouse into the heavy midday sun, the brightness almost too sharp after sitting in that dim room. I did not open the letter right away. I held it in my hands as I stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps, the building looming behind me, people walking by with their own stories, their own cases, their own secrets. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Linda. We need to talk. I looked at the screen for only a second. Then I locked it. She had done enough talking. Now it was my turn to listen. Not to her. To the one person whose voice still mattered. Grandma's. I sat in my car, turned the letter over carefully, and slid my thumb under the flap. I held the envelope for a long moment before opening it. It felt too delicate to rush. Too personal to tear carelessly. The courthouse parking lot wasn't the right place for it, but I also knew I couldn't wait. My grandmother's handwriting pulled something deep inside me. A tug, gentle but urgent. I slid the letter out and unfolded it slowly. The ink had her soft slant, the same style she used in grocery lists and birthday cards, the same strokes I'd watched her make while she wrote notes on scrap paper and tucked them into cookbooks. My throat tightened. It began simply. My sweet Madison, if you're reading this, it means I wasn't strong enough to tell you before. It doesn't mean I didn't want to. It just means I chose to do this in a way that protected you from the fight I knew was coming. I blinked hard, feeling my breath catch. Your aunt has spent her whole life believing titles matter. Oldest daughter, caretaker, executor, the one in charge. She thinks roles define her. But roles aren't truth. And they aren't love. You know that better than anyone. My fingers curled slightly around the paper. I left things to your aunt for years. I let her handle bills, insurance, paperwork, because she wanted control more than she wanted peace. I let her believe she was the center of the family because it made her feel needed. But that doesn't mean she was the center of my heart. My eyes blurred for a moment. I blinked fast to clear them. You were the one who showed up every week, even when I didn't ask. You were the one who stayed with me when the house felt too quiet. You were the one who remembered the songs I loved, the recipes I forgot, the stories I told you 100 times. You were the one who understood me without needing to take anything from me. A soft sob escaped my throat before I could stop it. Do not let anyone tell you family is measured by inheritance or bloodlines or old paperwork. Family is who holds your hand in the dark. Family is who sits with you in silence. Family is who you can call at 2 in the morning when you're scared, and they show up without asking why. You were that for me. I pressed the letter against my chest for a second, inhaling slowly, trying not to fall apart in the driver's seat. The trust is my choice. My voice. My decision. And I made it with a clear mind and a full heart. You are not a safe home. A future you control. A life that is yours, not one dictated by anyone else's expectations. Her writing became a little shakier toward the end. And, my love, do not fight with Linda. She is not your enemy. She is just a woman who has never been loved the way she needed. She thinks love is power. You know love is presence. Be kind if you can. Be distant if you must. But never let her make you feel small. I closed my eyes, feeling the words settle deep inside me. I love you more than I ever said out loud. Grandma. When I finished reading, I let the letter rest on my lap. For a long time, I didn't move. The sunlight outside softened around me, warm through the windshield, gentle in a way that felt like a hand on my shoulder. I breathed in slowly and wiped my cheeks with the backs of my fingers. There was no anger left in me. Not toward Grandma. Not toward the judge. Not toward the process. But toward my aunt, there was a coldness. Not rage. Not fury. Just a cold, quiet boundary. One I hadn't known how to set until now. I folded the letter gently and slipped it back into its envelope, then placed it carefully in my glove compartment. I sat there a few more minutes, letting my heartbeat settle into something calm again. When I finally started the car, I didn't drive home. I drove to Grandma's house instead. The driveway was empty. The curtains were drawn. The porch light was still broken the way it had been for years, no matter how many times we reminded my aunt to fix it. The house felt hollow without Grandma in it, like the walls were waiting for someone to tell them what to do next. I unlocked the back door with the spare key Grandma gave me years ago. It was tucked inside a faded envelope under the third planter on the patio. She always said, just in case. The air inside smelled like lavender and old books. I walked through each room slowly, tracing my fingers over furniture she loved, over picture frames that held decades of memories, over a quilt she stitched by hand that still hung on the back of the sofa. This house was part of my childhood. Part of my heart. And now, legally, it was part of my future. Not because my aunt approved. Not because I demanded it. But because Grandma chose it. As I moved into her bedroom, I realized something. Grandma must have known this would happen. She must have seen the tension coming before anyone else. She was always the one who understood everyone without needing them to say things out loud. Maybe that's why she filed the trust quietly. Why she didn't involve my aunt. Why she kept her decision sealed. Because she knew my aunt's reaction would be exactly what it was at the courthouse. Entitlement isn't predictable. It's guaranteed. I sat on Grandma's bed and let myself cry for the first time since the funeral. Not because of the money. Not because of the legal victory. But because Grandma saw me. She really saw me. And she protected me in the one moment she couldn't protect herself. After a while, I heard a car door slam outside. My stomach tightened. I walked to the living room window and peeked through the curtains. My aunt stood in the driveway, pacing back and forth, hands clenched at her sides, her expression tight with something between anger and desperation. I didn't open the door. I waited. She paced a little more, looked at the house, then finally marched to the front porch and knocked hard. Madison. Open the door. We need to talk. I didn't move. Her knock came again, louder this time. Madison. I am not leaving until you open this door. I stared at her through the curtain. Her face was flushed, partly from the sun, partly from humiliation she didn't yet know how to process. I took a deep breath and stepped back from the window. I didn't open the door. She kept knocking, each hit harder than the last. Then her voice shifted. It wasn't confident anymore. It wasn't angry. It was shaking. Please open the door. My heart tightened for a second, but I didn't move. She had spoken enough. She had decided enough. She had controlled enough. Now the quiet belonged to me. Eventually, the knocking stopped. I listened as her footsteps retreated down the porch, walked across the driveway, then faded. When I checked the window again, her car was gone. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was mine. The next morning, the sun came through the living room blinds in faint stripes, landing across the carpet the way it used to when Grandma sat on the sofa with her knitting. I stood in the doorway for a while, letting that memory settle inside me. The house felt calmer. Or maybe I felt calmer. Either way, the storm my aunt tried to create wasn't moving through me anymore. It was passing over her instead. I spent the morning packing a few boxes. Not to move in just yet, but to start clearing space for what would come next. Grandma always said homes breathe. I never understood it until now. Walking through her hallway, I could feel where the air felt heavy and where it felt light. I opened windows, let the breeze in, let the house exhale months of tension. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from Grandma's attorney. I wanted to update you on the filings. Everything is officially processed. You have full authority. If there's anything you want to do next, you're free to direct us. Free to direct us. That sentence didn't feel like power. It felt like responsibility. The kind Grandma always trusted me with. The kind she knew I wouldn't misuse. I thanked him and set the phone down. Later that afternoon, my dad came by with groceries. He didn't say much at first. We walked from room to room together, touching furniture like it might break if we weren't gentle. Finally, he stopped in the dining room. She always wanted you to have this place, he said. She told me that more than once. She just didn't want to deal with your aunt's reaction. I nodded. I already knew she was right about that. Dad sighed. Linda called me last night. She said you locked her out. I met his eyes. She is not entitled to walk in here and demand anything from me. He shook his head quickly. I didn't say you were wrong. I'm just telling you what she said. I waited. Letting him finish. She is embarrassed, he said softly. She expected the entire estate to flow through her. Your grandma saw right through that. She knew Linda would treat everything like a throne. He looked at me with a tired sadness. I'm sorry you had to hear what she said to you. You didn't deserve that. I swallowed softly. I know. He put a hand on my shoulder. I am proud of you. You didn't yell. You didn't fight dirty. You didn't sink to her level. You just let the truth speak. That meant more to me than he realized. After he left, I went through Grandma's writing desk. Inside, tucked under old notes and recipe cards, was the small journal she kept during her last year. I opened it carefully. The pages smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. The first few entries were simple. Weather. Pain levels. Garden updates. But one entry stopped me. Linda is worried about the money again. I wish she worried half as much about the people around her. Another page. Madison sat with me today and read aloud while I rested. She is soft in all the places Linda is sharp. Maybe that's why they clash. Or maybe it's why I trust Madison more. I traced my finger gently over the ink. There were no secrets here. No tricks. No hidden agenda. Grandma didn't owe anyone an explanation, but she still wrote one anyway. For herself. Maybe for me. That night, just before leaving the house, I heard a small sound at the front door. A tap. Not a knock. A hesitant touch, like someone afraid to be heard. I opened the curtain just an inch. It was my aunt. She wasn't dressed like she had been at the courthouse. Her expensive blazer was gone. She wore an oversized sweater. Her hair wasn't styled. And her face looked older, like the courtroom had taken something from her she didn't know how to get back. I didn't open the door. She didn't try to force her way in this time. She didn't pound. She didn't yell. She just stood there for a moment, staring at the house. Then she reached into her bag, took out a small photograph, and slid it under the door. I waited until she walked away before picking it up. It was a picture of me as a kid sitting on Grandma's lap at the backyard picnic table. Aunt Linda was in the background, smiling stiffly at the camera. On the back, in her handwriting, was one short sentence. "I'm sorry." I stared at the words for a long moment. They weren't enough to undo what she said. They weren't enough to unhurt the months of manipulation. They weren't enough to erase the years of small jabs about worth and belonging. But they were a start. I placed the photo on Grandma's mantel and locked the door behind me. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I didn't chase her apology. I simply let it sit where it belonged. In the air, quiet, without expectation. A few weeks later, I stood before the probate judge again to finalize paperwork. The courtroom was less tense this time. Fewer people. Less noise. More clarity. When the judge asked me one final question about the trust, I answered calmly. My voice steady. My decisions clear. Outside, my aunt watched from a bench in the hallway. She didn't approach. She didn't speak. She just nodded once when our eyes met. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. Enough to close the story, not enough to reopen it. I walked out of the courthouse with the documents tucked under my arm and the sunlight warm on my face. Not because I had won something, but because I had protected something that mattered. Not just a house. Not just assets. But the truth about who Grandma believed I was. And the truth about who my aunt believed she was. The courtroom didn't give me the revenge. The truth did. The law just made it loud enough for everyone to hear. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. There are more coming. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I want you with me for every story that follows.